Hello, everyone. Guess who? Guess who? If you didn't know before, it's time to find out now. This is Dominic Copeland, and this is the ish that needs to be said. I am back off of the summer, moving and grooving, maxing and relaxing, ready to get the job done, ready to say what needs to be said. The ish that needs to be said, to be perfectly clear. And what is that? I believe that when we don't say the things that need to be said that can move us forward, that could change and make a difference, and that lack of communication, that lack of vision, we fall apart, we falter, and we don't get to see the views and opinions and the heart of other people. We fail in being the most important thing that we can be. And my friends, that is human beings. Not humans doing, but humans being, humans belonging. Being of one. Because at the end of the day, we can break ourselves down in a race, cast all kinds of crazy things. Only one race, scientifically proven. That's the human race. That's you and me, that's us together, getting through, surviving through, and striving through this thing called life. Living it and loving it. So come with me today on this beautiful journey. I'm going to tell you about some of the great things that I've saw, some of the things and the signs that are ahead of us, the signposts and kind of how to read those and what's happening. And the world has changed. We got Kamala Harris that's hopped into the presidential race. Joe Biden's out. So it's not about politics. It's about the politics of reality, my friend. It's not about politics. It's about the politics of reality, how our reality is governed, how our reality is manifested, grown, created, and stitched together, and then presented to us. And that's the things that we're going to be talking about, because when you can see behind that, my friends, and all of a sudden, you can start to read, as they say, the tea leaves. You can start to see what's coming, what's happening, what's going to be there. Tony Robbins says that success leaves clues. Well, society, humanity, and what's ahead leaves clues as well. So we're going to learn to read those clues and then figure out what's happening. And then I also want to help you, my friend, so that we can be whole, we can be ready, we can be prepared for what's ahead. Because there might be some dark days, might be some beautiful sunny days as well. And how are we going to work through both of those? All right? So the ish that needs to be said, I'm going to take you behind the screen. Ignore the wizard that's behind there working his little magic. We're going to get to see how the magic is made, right? So let's rock and roll. Who's ready today? Who is ready to go? Who is ready and fired up, ready, rocking and rolling? I'm back. Let's go. Woo! Here's to a great day, great life, and this great moment that we're having together, my friends. I am live. I am rocking and rolling. Hop on in. The water's fine. It's a bunch of sharks, but we're going to swim with the sharks and not get eaten. Great book. Hello, everyone. Got to tell you, I had a fantastic, wonderful trip going through this summer. I took a month. My wife and I, we traveled down south, as they say. So we went to Pennsylvania, which isn't south to me. I'm originally from there, but all along the East Coast. So I went to Pennsylvania first, Delaware, went to Virginia Beach. From there, we went to Hilton Head. From there, we went to Florida, to Orlando, and then to Melbourne. Then we went up to Georgia. And then we went to, where did we go from Georgia? We went to Georgia, and then we made our way up to, I think it might have been Connecticut. No, we had to stop in there. But somewhere, so that was our mix. That was our vacation. That was where we went. And we saw some beautiful things down there, some beautiful areas. And part of why I went down there is because that is where some of my roots are that I know of. You know, my father's family from South Carolina, my mother's family's from Georgia. They all moved up to Pennsylvania, where I was born. And then I'm out in Massachusetts. So, you know, the family history going from the South up to north and then further up north, as far as my kids are concerned, that whole legacy. And I wanted to connect back into my roots and found some fascinating and wonderful things. But I want to talk to you about not my roots specifically, but about the roots of our nation as far as they are currently seen as growing. And what I mean by that is what's happening right now in our world. When we first got down to Virginia Beach, because this whole vacation for me was it was a crab fest. I was like, I want to go have so much crab that I can't think about eating crab ever again. I didn't quite accomplish that in the moment I did, but now I want some more fresh seafood, the crabs and everything else, the boils. We have the crabs, the shrimp, got the potatoes, you got all kinds of stuff in there. 3 different kinds of crabs. Man, it was wonderful, especially if you get the bigger types of crab, the king crab, the snow crab, and all that stuff, so that you're not starving to death by the time you open it up, or open it up all at once, and then you just have all the crab meat there and can do whatever you want with it. So that was my trip. That was my journey, part of it. But so we get down to Virginia Beach, first night. We're staying off of the beach, and we go to this dining spot. Nice spot. Food was incredible, amazing. Had a nice little bar set up and everything else. And there was a gentleman that was there, and he was talking to, other people that were there and around. And I could tell from this gentleman and how he was talking, it seemed like he was trying too hard to connect to everybody there, or it just felt like he was struggling with something. Okay. I could feel that as I was sitting there, and it's like he's trying too hard to connect to everybody, too hard to be, maybe something that he's not. Who knows? But as the night goes on, he's drinking more than everything else, and he's just falling deeper off this cliff and going deeper into talk that's not really talk that you should have at a restaurant, especially of that type. And a talk that I personally don't engage in myself because I don't want to hear those things. He's talking about how his sexual stuff and how he is with women and how women. He's talking about all kinds of crazy stuff that we don't need to hear. We don't want to hear. We're not here for that, right? I'm with my wife. We're here to enjoy a great meal. And this guy's just blabbering on and yelling and screaming and everything else. And it was just offensive, right? It was offensive to me. But part of our society is most people don't care about what men are offended by. It's like, you're a man. You shouldn't care. You should talk this way anyway. I don't believe in that, right? I don't have to talk at the base lowest level to prove my manhood, right? Never had to. The problem is, all those people that are talking at the base lowest level are trying to prove their manhood. I was like, I don't have to talk it, I live it. You know what I mean? I don't have to talk it, I live it. If there's something I want to get done, I go get it done, period. So I don't have to prove my manhood to this person, that person, anyone else. I know who I am, I know what I'm about. I'm secure in myself. Most people aren't that, unfortunately. And no one's perfect. I'm not perfect. Plenty of flaws, plenty of insecurities, have about other things, prove myself in other ways. But as far as trying to prove my manhood and sexual, I don't have to do any of that nonsense. I'm like, y'all go ahead with that. I don't want to talk about that stuff. I'm too busy out there doing what I do. But he just went deep into it, and he was saying some of the craziest stuff you'd ever hear. And I'm like, this guy's out of control. And my wife was like, this is ridiculous. Guy's out of control. The person that was working the bar came over and was like, he's like, yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. We're trying to, he went over to the guy and said, hey, you mind? Just calm it down a little bit. Just tame it down a little bit in the things that you said. And so the guy who was originally saying all these statements starts going after the bar manager. And he's like, shut the F up and go serve drinks. Go do your job and do blah, blah, blah. I'm like, this is crazy. And he's just going on and on and on and on and on, and just deeper and deeper and deeper. And he starts having conflicts and attacking other people in the bar. Now, mind you, this gentleman, there was a mixture of people in there. He was surrounded by mostly white people. He himself was black, or black appearing anyway. He was light skinned. So I didn't ask his specific cultural background. But he was black appearing, and he stated that he was. So I'm going to take him at his word for that. He had another person next to him that was black as well, dark skinned. And then there was a couple that were white sitting over there, and he starts going after the woman and says, you're the one that says that, you're part Indian or something like that, or part black. And it's attacking her and going after her, and then goes after her husband, and then says to the husband, you're not a man and everything else, and says to the wife, when you want a real man, someone that can really satisfy you, come see me. It's like, I can go take care of you right now. And I mean, this is crazy. I was like, wow, this is nuts. I was like, what kind of man talks to another man and a man's wife like that? That's just crazy. It's beyond crazy. Today's a different day and age, that we're in. When I was growing up, it was in the 90s, and those situations would have been handled a lot differently because you didn't have to sit back and just take that. Nowadays, police get involved, you're getting sued, all this other crazy stuff. So it's not the way to handle things, but also something that in the moment I failed in, because this person starts to attack my wife too. And I'm like, that's not happening. So no physical altercations. It's just verbally like, that's enough. That's not going to happen, blah, 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 blah. He's trying to, let's go outside. Let's go. Don't need to go outside. You're the one that has a problem. It's coming for somebody that you don't need to come for. Like that's not being a man. Like that's being cowardly. That's not how I was raised. That's not how I was brought up. And if you want to talk that stuff, you have to be able to back it up. That's the other. If you're going to talk it, you got to be able to back it up. But again, in today's day and age, that's not something that typically occurs. Are we better off for that? In some ways, yes. I don't advocate violence. I do advocate standing up for yourself, and whatever that may take or mean in that moment. Hopefully does not come to violence or anything of that nature, but you have to protect yourself, right? But hopefully it can be dealt with in another way, but that's not always up to you. If that person chooses to step outside and step into violence and bring that to you when you're trying to move away from it, you got to do what you got to do to protect yourself. So that's where that part of it comes in. Outside of that, I was just thinking, what are the, you got to go call the cops. They had to go call the cops, wait for the cops to come in. It's like 20, 30 minutes later. Whole time this guy's going, nuts, just talking and spurting off at the mouth. And, the police come, do the reports and everything else, and go back to the restaurant the next day because we got a voucher because of the whole situation. So we go back the next day to use the voucher. It was closed. So we didn't know what happened there. And then come back the day after that as we're leaving Virginia Beach and see the owner had to come out previously when it originally happened. And the owner was there, and he's like, yeah, the guy came in after the police had come. Police came and held him for, I don't know, like 30, 40 minutes or whatever it was, talking to him. Then they let him go. And I never advocate to see someone put in handcuffs or jailed. That's not what it's about. You do have to have self-control, right? You can't just go crazy. You can't just go verbally attacking people and trying to cause physical altercations with people. That's not acceptable. There has to be some mechanism for that person to be able to either self-regulate or lead to an avenue where they can self-regulate or have to be regulated, unfortunately. So I didn't come to any, the cops having to do anything crazy with this individual. They came over, talked to us about the situations, like, did it get physical? No, it never got physical. It was just words. And so when I went back in there, when it was finally open, had been closed the day before because of the air conditioning wasn't working properly, and it was over 100 degrees that day. So they had to wait for it to be worked on. And the owner said, the guy, after the police let him go, he came back in and he apologized. He said, I've been going through some things and it's just been tough. My wife is leaving me and, blah, blah, and so on and so forth, So that's where I came in as far as my understanding and comprehension of the situation. I knew he was going through some things. I didn't lead with that when I was talking to him. And that's where I felt like my failure came in. Like they say, hurt people hurt people. So I knew there was something going on there. And from his over-sexualization of everything, it made sense with him trying to prove his manhood, like I can satisfy her if you can't, and so on and so forth, because it looked like at that point he's trying to prove himself as a man through the hurt that he's going through. And unfortunately, men aren't taught how to manage those emotions outside of anger, frustration, outside of sexuality, trying to prove themselves and do all kinds of crazy stuff, sleeping with other women and whatever it might be to prove their own manhood. So I failed in recognizing that situation and seeing, you're going through some things, you're hurting right now, and this is how you're displaying that. Now, does he have the right to treat people like that because he's going through something? No, not at all. Not in any way, shape, or form, right? None of us do. But it would be easier to connect, as Stephen Covey said, that paradigm shift, that shift in our perception of the situation, if we knew, and if he could just lead with, what I'm going through some things, But that's not socially acceptable. What is socially acceptable for him to act out the way he did as far as in the beginning, that ultra macho, ultra aggressive malehood trying to prove himself and who he is, machismo, that's acceptable. Now, the way he took it and started attacking others, that was unacceptable completely. But in society, the other stuff before that, him talking about, I'm getting this much, and I can tell you all about black women and how blah, blah, and all this other nonsense, that's all acceptable talk as far as being a macho man, being a man. It's a bunch of bull and a bunch of nonsense, because that's not what being a man is about in any way, shape, or form. And that's not even what my point is. It's part of the point, but part of the point is what I'm seeing throughout the nation, because I'll give you another story. As we traveled further into the South, and it's not just the South. Being on vacation just helped me to see these things and be in those environments, because it's the same up north. I believe it's the same throughout the country, possibly throughout the world. As we went and continued on our trip, we went to other places, and we went to Savannah, Georgia, and we got there at night and was like, well, let's go out and get something to eat or something to drink or something, So we went to McDonald's to grab a drink. And we went there, and it was a chaotic scene, my friends. It was a chaotic scene as far as what's happening in our nation. There was a population of homeless that were out. There was young kids out. And the mixture didn't sit with me, only because, and it was a range of, as far as the homeless, it wasn't just black or white. It was black, white, and so on and so forth, right? Mostly men from what I saw at that time period. I'm sure there's other women there too that I also saw around at different times. But there I saw, in that McDonald's, it was, homeless men, black and white. And just their interactions were a lot different, right? I could see, just like the gentleman that I saw in Virginia Beach, mentally, there's a lot of issues and a lot of struggling that's happening throughout our nation. These gentlemen were very uptight, ready to fight each other. Some of them walked around with brass knuckles and a knife. Some of them were being overly sexual towards young kids that were out and about, teenagers that were out and about. I wasn't comfortable with any of it. I just felt it just wasn't a good scene. It wasn't a safe scene, because those things do not de-escalate by themselves typically, right? Because if someone's going through a mental issue or mental, they're just in a phase or whatever it is, that typically doesn't de-escalate itself, because they've lost the ability to self-regulate. So someone has to come in to help them to do that. So I just was not sure how far all this would go, not that night, but eventually going forward. What are we going to see? What would these conflicts start to bring about? And even when we went there I was going to go to the bathroom, but the bathroom was closed down, but all on the floor, it looked like almost like they had some traumatic medical experience where MEs or whoever, the ambulance had to come in because it looks like there was stuff that they would have that was left on the floor that was still being cleaned up. So I was just like, this is, my wife and I was like, all right, let's get the hell out of here. This isn't, this isn't our time to be out here. This isn't of us anymore. You get to a certain age, I guess, and you start to see things a little bit differently. But it wasn't just the case in Savannah, Georgia. It was all throughout wherever we go. There was a homeless population. We went to Charlotte, North Carolina, stayed right by where the Charlotte Hornets play. And, we were eating breakfast in the morning at the hotel, and there was a homeless person that came in there. The one door was open, came in there, trying to grab food and so forth. And, they had to have security come and, usher them away and make sure. But I'm like, literally, I feel like I'm in some kind of sick dystopian drama where you're part of the class that's sitting back, throwing a party while everyone outside is looking in starving. And you're throwing a feast and throwing food on the floor and just living carefree. I was just like, man, this is a whole lot different. Because I remember Tupac years ago, back in the 90s, talking about, I think he did an interview with MTV, and he was talking about a similar situation. And that situation was for all of, talking about the majority of Black Americans and their situation, their plight in America, where, it's like inside we can see all the people in there, all the white, having a great party. And at first we're like, singing these beautiful songs like, please open the door, let us in, we like some food, please feed us, and it's like it's beautiful melody. It's almost like a Disney type thing where you're like, hey, you're trying to get these people to see you, show some humanity, and give you some food because you're starving. And they're in there throwing a feast and have more than enough for, themselves, you, and many more. And he says, after a while, being ignored, but you can still see this festival going on, this festival of gluttony that's happening. And you're on the outside, starving, near death. He says you get to a point where you're not singing those nice little songs anymore. You're not begging people. You're kicking in the door with your 4-4 saying, give me some food before I blast all you fools. All you fools get blasted. Because that's typically how these things go. It's an escalation. And I'm seeing all throughout our nation as we have this decrease of the middle, an increase of people who don't have financial stability, and even people in the middle are losing that financial stability because we're being taxed literally out of it, taxed into poverty in some cases. Taxes are just going up and skyrocketed. I've talked to different people, different teachers and everyone else, and they're like, look, I know taxes, they brought in Joe Biden, and dear God, why do you keep falling for this, people? Please, why do you keep falling from this? When he says he's bringing in tens of thousands of more of tax agents, it's not to go after the rich. I can promise you that. It's to go after all of us, because you wouldn't need that many to go after the rich and the wealthy. No, you need that many to come after us. And since then, even my own personal taxes have skyrocketed. I'm like, why? I haven't made skyrocketed more money. I've got all these kids in college paying for those bills. How could I possibly owe you money above and beyond what I already pay you? That's insane. It's no longer becoming taxes as a partnership and me paying my part, or we as a community paying our part. No, my friends, it's becoming not a partnership, but indentured servitude, where we're paying the majority of our money into taxes, but we're not getting back the services that we should be getting back for that. And some people say, if you don't like it, go somewhere else. No, you go somewhere else, because you're the one that's not American. Close your mouth, out my face. You go somewhere else. The ish that needs to be said. Tired of playing nice with these individuals, these other Americans that are still stuck deep and sleep in the matrix. But again, going back to the situation where the guy was having that crisis because of the things that he was going through, and I wasn't recognizing that because those people put up those shields to make you think they're not going through anything, to make you think that their point of view is just, it's right. They don't care. But still got to recognize inside that they're probably struggling with the whole situation as well. And that is their way of addressing it, just putting up that wall. Well, if you don't like it, leave. No. That's not being an American. And anyone that tells you that, please tell them that. Please let them know. Because their parents and their grandparents, great-grandparents probably would have smacked them for saying that. No, you got to get up and get involved. Because for you to have the right to go smoke a cigarette or take a break or work an 8-hour work week instead of 16 hours with no breaks and less pay, people died for that right. People gave their lives for every right that we have in the workplace and everywhere else. My friends, we have to stop this nonsense that we've been conditioned to believe, oh, if you don't think this way, then you're not American, or if you don't think this way, then you're wrong. It's not wrong. It's just common sense at some point. The common sense is not common, so I have to recognize that. But we should question. We must question the things that we see, and as our reality changes, because our reality is being dictated to us. We are not dictating it. We can and should be dictating it, but when it comes to taxes and everything else, we're made to, we need this in order for everything to work. No, we don't. All the money that we're being taxed, more and more, inflation, and less money going into our schools, less money going into those institutions, into our elementary schools, into our high schools, our preschools, our middle schools. There's places that have to lay off tons of teachers. There should never be a shortage of funds to go into education. We should never have to deal with over 100-year-old schools that have never been updated or fixed, that are moldy, that are full of disease, full of unsafe toxins. We should never have to deal with that. It's embarrassing as a nation, as America. We're supposed to be one of the leading nations of the world. Some say the leading nation of the world. So all the people that say, if you don't like it, leave. No, step into it, look at it, see it, and damn it, do something about it. If we are who we say we are, then let's be who we are. Let's be the great nation that we say we are. Not just speak about it, not just blurt it, not just puff up your chest and say, no, this is America. No, this is America. Do the work. Be who we say we are. Invest in the things that we need to invest into. If we want to build the best and the brightest, we have more than enough resources to do that. But all those resources are being taken out and away and put somewhere else. We can send billions, tens of billions, to fight wars. We can't spend a tenth of that amount to build schools, to update and refurbish schools, to put into education, to make sure that teachers have proper pay for all the work that they do. I can tell you myself teaching, woo, going into teaching. I've been in the private industry, international sales, different things, right? So it's not like my experience was, I've just only been teaching. No. Again, I see behind the veil. When you're working with corporations, other places, they want you to go get additional education. They want you to go get a master's. They pay for those things. Even right now, some construction industry and so forth, if you want to go get a degree, they can help pay for those things or pay it off for you, or teach you the skills that you need to be in that role that you're going to be in. When it comes to education, public education, that's simply not the case. You got to pay for it yourself. Tens of thousands of dollars. And in some places, right, require you to have a master's degree. Master's degree, which depends on where you go. Maybe on the low end, previously you might have been able to get a master's for 10, 12,000, 15,000. More likely it's going to cost you somewhere around 30,000 or so, 20 to 30,000, somewhere in that mix. And you might get a starting role as a teacher for around 40-something thousand a year with a master's degree. That is atrocious and unfathomable to me. That's insane. That's absolutely, that's disrespectful. That should never be the case. In other countries, Germany and other places, teachers are treated with a high respect. They're part of the upper class of society. Because in order to be a teacher, you have to get more certifications and accreditations than almost every other profession. This summer, even on vacation, I was working on additional accreditations that I have to get. So it's constant. It's never ending. It's ongoing. But you're not treated as that professional. And the worst part about it is we don't question it as a society. Instead, we allowed ourselves to be pulled apart and said, well, teachers shouldn't be paid more. Why should they be paid more? I'm not paid more. And that's where we lose every single time. Every single time. I erased college debt for them. I didn't have my debt erased. Oh, I didn't go to college. Why am I paying for theirs? You have no idea what the situation actually is. Especially in most of those cases, people taking out college loans at 7, 8% or whatever it is, usually 7%. They could be paying on those loans and have paid off the original balance of what they've already, or what they actually took out. It's paid off. But by the time they're done, they're paying off 2 to 3 to 4 times more than what they actually took out. That's insane. And that's where you're trying to balance and tip the scales and right proportions. And you can't say just because you were abused and had to do that, that now someone else should be abused and have to do that. Or you can say, oh, I didn't choose to be abused and put myself into that situation, so I shouldn't have to. You're not paying for them. You're just writing the system. The system is wrong. The system is off. The system is broken. Let's correct it. Let's write it. Let's put it in the place that it should be. And until we can start to do that, my friends, until we can start to do that and get over this, oh no, that group can't have it if I can't have it. We should be working towards each other for the best interest of all of us. Because guess what? If you can get this here, I can get something else over here. Right? But if I can't hop on board with you, you can't hop on board with me. We'll always be divided. That's how it's supposed to work. That's how the system is designed to work. There has to be a structure of classes in order for this thing to go the right way. Just think about it this way, my friends. Think about it this way. And I've said this before, but it still blows my mind. This issue that needs to be said, so I say it. It still blows my mind to this day. In order for us to have a good economy, we have to have a certain amount of people that are jobless. People can only have a certain amount of money in the bank. And we have to slow spending so people don't spend too much, because if they do, it'll trigger inflation. If you have too much money in the bank, triggers inflation. So if you're able to actually have enough money to live a good life, it triggers inflation so that you can go back to struggling instead of thriving. How does that make sense? If you have a certain amount of money, you should be able to have as much money in the bank as you want to. And that money should not be taxed because it's already been taxed. But in order to keep the system, quote unquote, balanced, taxes have to go up. What they can tax you on has to go up. And I'm still doing my research into this, but if they ever try to tax more heavily money from stocks, bonds, real estate, everything else. You should do everything in your power to not let that happen. And that should be every single American. Every single American. It's not about who's rich. I don't care about that, right? It's not about all these people from, why should they make more money from, be able to save more money from real estate or save more money from stocks and only be taxed at 20%. And while the rest of us have to be taxed at our jobs at a higher percentage. Guess what, my friends? Again, it's not about the rich. They just use that as a ploy to put these things in place so that they can use them against everybody else. Because the rich, they'll find a way. They're not going to pay that. It's not going to happen. It's just not. Hasn't and won't. Okay? I'm letting you know. So that's not about the quote-unquote rich. That's about the rest of us. You say, well, I'm not in stocks. I'm 401ks. They're trying to get to your 401ks. They're trying to get to the money that you have invested for retirement so that they can get more of that money. So I'm looking more into it, and I'll talk about that more later once I have a better understanding of it. But anything that's in capital gains, anything that comes from your retirement that once you pay it out, that could then be considered capital gains from your original amount that they can say if you got, if you invest $100,000 and you got 20%, $20,000 from your 401k, so $120,000. Now that $20,000, they can tax you at 20%. But if they can put in different laws, then they can tax you at 25, 30, whatever percentage that they decide upon. And once they start, they're not going to stop. Once they open up that door, please do not open up that door. And even with real estate, if you own your own houses or own property, you're opening up yourself to having to pay a higher amount as well. So I'm saying all this to say, these are the changes that are coming. These are the things behind the scene. I'm letting you see behind the matrix, behind the veil, as that man's back there, the wizard working his magic. And if we don't all come together and stop all this foolishness, fighting over arbitrary nonsense, which they keep us fighting over, we should be coming together to design how we want our society to look, design the tax codes and everything else that we need in place to help us to flourish. It can't just be if we all can actually afford our own lives. It triggers inflation to such a degree where we can't all afford our own lives. That doesn't make sense. And I don't believe in more taxes. What I believe in is spending the money wiser, because guess what? If I have a default within myself, I can't just go and tax other people more to take the money. You have to be able to utilize the money that you have, make sure it's efficient and going to the places that it needs to go to, such as education here in America, rebuilding that system and so forth. We will talk about that more as we go along, my friends. I just wanted to say before that, I'm back. We're back. We're rocking and rolling. The ish that needs to be said. If you haven't done it already, hit the like button, hit subscribe. Come along with this beautiful journey as we build this community. And we're advancing forward to not just talk about it, not just speak about it, but be it, do it. We are the change that we want to see, that we need to see. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. There's no cavalry coming through the door. We're already here. It's time to rock and roll and get down to it. So join me again, my friends, on this beautiful journey. The ish that needs to be said. I'm Dominic Copeland. Let's rock and roll. Together we rock.